Welcome back to another video. Pyxis versus Canon C400. At the end of the day, when you rig them out, one is slightly more expensive than the other, and maybe you've been thinking, I need to get a new camera. Which one should I get? Well, today we're here to maybe help you answer that question and see which camera might be more right for you and the type of work that you do specifically. Because no camera is perfect, every camera is suited differently to different people. So today, we're just going to talk about a little bit of the difference, kind of use our little trusty point system, and then try to determine at the end which one might be a better value for the money, and then see if we can help you with your decision. If you haven't been to our channel before, please like and subscribe. We do a lot of reviews and overviews of new and old, sometimes uncovered treasure, cinema equipment, lenses, cameras, lighting, whatever, we do it. We have a rental house here in Seattle. We oftentimes get in gear, and it is our job to know as much about it as we can, and then we share that with you, because what else are we doing? It's slow up here in Seattle. Okay, getting right into it. The battle of the 6K cameras that can both shoot RAW. The price, $3,000 alone US for the Pyxis, and $7,999 for the C400, $8,000, 3, 8. You might be saying, that seems a little bit unfair because that is honestly a lot more money than $3,000. It's a little more nuanced than that. This camera comes with a lot of stuff when you're talking about being super ready for cinema and honestly, almost any type of work you would throw at it. This camera does a lot for the price. Does it do as much? No, but it's also not the same price. So we're gonna talk a little bit about, once you've rigged up this camera and build it out, what is the actual price difference between this camera? Now, realistically, on the Pyxis 6K, by the time you get a cage and put a PL mount and have some sort of ND system, an audio module, and a monitor, realistically, you're more close to like $6,000. Now, this here with the camera and just the mid-49 cage, and you'll notice both of these have mid-49 cages. They're great. It's very similar on both. We like to use them kind of as a hand grip, but they're really robust and sturdy. This is about $9,000, and they both run on the same type of media. And if you factor in, you're gonna need batteries for both, that's a wash. You're gonna need media for both, that's a wash. But as they sit, you know, to get something like NDs in this, and you know, cage on both, and a touch screen that interfaces with the camera, you know, you might be like $6,000 into this system, and this is more like $9,000 right here. So instead of it being $5,000 different, it's like $3,000 different. Now that's a lot closer. And we're gonna talk about, is maybe this camera a better solution than that when it comes down to value for the money and what you can do with it? Now, first off, let's start by saying, hopefully, you're all out there charging money for your gear when you go out on shoots, because that's how you make money back. It's just good business. So, if you're talking about an investment, you want that to bring back more money. And first off, when I look at something, I want a camera that can do the most amount of work, because certain cameras are like built for specific segments. Say like the Mini LF. It has a lot of feature sets that are really great for high-end cinema, but then once you go into dock, it's a little bit harder, or corporate, it's a little bit overkill. Now the C400, in my opinion, given its specs, really is great for almost anything that you want to do, and it's not that it's great or bad, it can just do anything. You could take this on a cinema shoot. It has all the I/O you'd ever need for getting things to different departments. It's built well, it is robust, it has a PL mount, it has built-in NDs. It's good for pretty much anything. Cinema, corporate, dock, music video, shoots high frame rate. It's got a good sensor. Whatever you want, this camera can pretty much do it. This camera has a lot of the same stuff. Great image, maybe even a better image out of camera than the C400, but it's lacking some other things that this doesn't have, like built-in NDs, autofocus capability. The low light is much better on the C400. Now, when you're talking about a camera you can take to more shoots, right off the bat, this kind of checks that box. You can do more. You can take it more places. You can take it on more shoots. And because it's a little more expensive, you can charge more money for it. So this camera already has a little bit of an advantage if you have the money up front to pay that extra little bit. Now we're talking about image straight out of the gate. Both of these have a claimed right around 14 stops of latitude, but the way they're distributed is slightly different. The Pyxis is a very close to an even split on its base ISO of about 7 under, 7 over, close-ish to that, which is really nice. Kind of feels like the Alexa if you're similar to that platform. This, similar to the Burano C500's FX6, it prioritizes low light capability or more shadow retention than highlight. At your base ISOs, you're getting more of a split, say like 8 under, 6 over, or 9 under and 5 over, something like that. So it's a little bit different of a thought process when you're shooting, but knowing that up front is kind of a thing to keep in mind. If you're gonna shoot, I like to save the highlights as much as I can on this, knowing I've got a little bit more flexibility in the midtones and the shadows to kind of boost things up. This, I don't know, shoot how I want to really, because I got a pretty even split. That being said, right out of camera, I think they both look great. Image, I would call it a tie in terms of image. Just depends on how you like to shoot, really. Moving on to, let's say, autofocus capability. Well, that just goes to the Canon, bar none. It does it, this really doesn't, and this does it really good. So if you are somebody that wants to go into dock and do autofocus, the Canon, great there. Let's move into something like low light. The Canon, it's just better. Triple native ISO, you can shoot 12,800, and with a little bit of noise reduction, it's pretty clean, and it's really nice. This, I would say, as a modern camera, is pretty good. It's gonna be better than something like an Alexa, but maybe not as good as other high-end cameras like Venice, Venice 2, Raptor, or something like that. So good, but not great. Another point to the Canon. Let's talk about things like built-in image stabilization. Canon has it. Even though it's electronic, it's an option on EF and PL, whatever you want. You have to do that in post with this camera. And you can, it's pretty good. You can do that in post on either camera if you want to. So, another point to Canon. So when you're talking about formats and codecs, both shoot RAW at 6K, and this on the Pyxis is going to be only B-RAW. So, but you're gonna get a lot of flavors of B-RAW, both constant bitrate, constant quality, and several flavors of that. Also, you've got a good amount of ways to choose what your pixel readout in terms of your starting kind of aspect ratio of the sensor and how it is using vertical versus horizontal. Now, Canon has a little bit less of that, but what it does have is a really great super sampled 422 10-bit codec that goes down to 4K that you can shoot up to, I think, 120 frames a second. And that is nice for just a lot more types of workflows. If you're doing corporate and people are concerned about media or working in a RAW format, maybe they don't have Resolve or something else, you just get a little bit more client satisfaction from codec options in the Canon. Not to say this isn't great, but more options is nice when you're talking about how many jobs can I take this on. And that being said, when you're talking about sensor size, this has a 3x2 open gate sensor. This has a 3x2 sensor also, but you can't shoot in 3x2 on this camera. So for people doing a lot of anamorphic work, this is just gonna give you a little bit more option when it comes to 2x, 1.8, 1.5, 1.3, and varying degrees of a starting aspect ratio to get the exact final delivery that you're looking for. Whereas this camera is gonna be a little more traditional. While it does offer anamorphic support, it's not as robust as what the Pyxis offers. So this one's kind of a toss-up in terms of your shooting style. So yeah, there's that. Let's talk about some hard buttons on the body. The Canon has just more of them that you can assign however you want. Several buttons from the side of the camera to the top screen, to the side handle over here, the back of the camera. If you're somebody that likes to work quick and have hotkeys, this is gonna give you maybe a little bit more efficient workflow on set because the monitor is also touchscreen and you can navigate all your settings very quickly on this as well. Pyxis has some hotkeys, few on the side here, and the touchscreen is very user intuitive, and when the EVF is out and the touchscreen, you will have some there, but it's probably gonna be about half. And to me, that's a win for the Canon. Now, where I do see a win for the Pyxis is in this side monitor. This is a very color accurate monitor. From what we've seen, what we've shot looks very similar to what we're seeing on the screen, and it's great to be able to have an all-time reference monitor if what you're using up here, like a small HD or some off-brand monitor, might not have the best color representation. You always have an accurate image on the side. You might not always get that on the Canon. I do think that this touchscreen is great, but you pretty much have to always have it on here in some fashion. And I think that's maybe gonna obviously be a point for the Pyxis because this screen is a great addition if you want to use it. Now, ND filters. None, some, win. This we've equipped with a L to PL adapter from Breakthrough that has a really good amount of ND from a variable aspect in here. And honestly, I think it's the best way to do this if you're gonna be PL. But ultimate functionality is here because you can put literally anything you want on this, whether it's an RF lens or an RF to EF adapter, RF to PL, you're always gonna retain internal ND and it's always gonna be color accurate, and that is awesome. Can't really beat that. Let's just quickly talk about batteries. Canon, Pyxis, Sony batteries, Canon batteries. It's kind of a toss-up if you're trying to get the cheap batteries. If you wanna go with the batteries on this that will power smart lenses or use the mount to power servos in here, they're pretty pricey. Simultaneously, the standard 98 watt hour Sony batteries to power this can be also expensive. So it's kind of a toss up there. Batteries are batteries. The big thing is, they can both run internal and they both have external power if you wanted to put a plate on here. So really not that big of a deal. Moving on to something that I personally think is a huge deal, I/O. Ins and outs. Canon has a metric crap ton of them for a camera in this price point. Blackmagic has a few. Now, with the USB on the front of this camera, you are on the touch screen that comes able to control the whole interface of the camera, have a color accurate monitor on top, and independently choose what you want to do. But from there, you only have one other SDI, and if you do need multiple outs, you have two, which is a step up from a lot of cameras, honestly, in this price point. But it's hard to compete with this camera that has two SDIs that work independent of this touchscreen as well as an HDMI port. 4 outputs, doubles this, and depending on what you need, that could be the deal breaker between a really trouble-free shoot and something that is a massive pain in the butt with a bunch of external stuff trying to duplicate signals downstream. So another point for the Canon in terms of I/O. Another factor in the I/O is sound. You have one input on this camera that does basically mini XLR with phantom power, and then you have a 3.5 mic jack on the back. 2 inputs. They actually sound really good. I think the preamps in this camera actually are a really nice upgrade. If you want to run internal, you can. But on the Canon, you have 2 mini XLRs that can be converted to full size if you need them to be, as well as the addition of a port here that can allow the expansion up to 4 independent XLRs. So, if you're doing live events or some other stuff and everybody's mic'd in, you got 4 talent and they all need to go to a different channel, Canon just has more option there as well. Now, card slots, dual CFB on the Pyxis, single CFB, and SD on this. I don't know if you're gonna really make use of the dual SD on this card in the same way you would on this camera, but you can do things on this camera for the dual slot that, relay record and proxies. So they're just 2 different formats, which they had to do for size, I understand. Kind of a wash there. Both have dual slots if you're somebody that needs the capability of a dual slot system. Size and weight. Honestly, when you strip these down, I think they're basically the same camera. And to me, I really like this form factor. I think you can put these on a gimbal, no problem. We had them on the RS4, stripped down. They work great. Not really any issues. The biggest advantage there is just this has autofocus. If you are gonna run on a gimbal, you do get a little bit more flexibility to keep the package smaller if you're trying to do focus on the go. But from a size and weight standpoint, both cameras, killer for the price point and a really solid way to, be in a really small footprint for not a lot of money. Battery life. If you were to put the same batteries on both cameras, the Canon runs longer. So at the end of the day, what that really equates to is you might have more batteries or bigger batteries for the Pyxis in terms of runtime. So something to consider when you're building out your kit. Image and dynamic range. We covered image, but dynamic range, they claim about the same amount of latitude each. They are just separated differently, both in terms of over and under middle gray, and then how that's collected on set. It is much more apparent as you shift up your base ISO up and down, watching your distribution of shadow and highlight retention change based on your ISO. It's a lot tougher to see that happening in action on the Canon. Some of you might like that. This is just consistent. There's no penalties, or far less. This is not so much a penalty as you get added flexibility. So if you like the extra flexibility, based on where you want to shoot this camera, you do get to shift how you prioritize highlights or shadows. And to me, honestly, I like this method better. I don't know if Canon will do that in this camera. We will see. But for now, for the time being, that is all you get in this camera. But this has a triple base native ISO, or this has a double base native ISO. So you get a little bit of a trade-off. You get more ISO out of this, but this with your ISO on your RAW seems to give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you want to shoot. Connectivity. This camera offers some really fun stuff like Bluetooth connectivity over iPad or phone. You can control your camera, do a bunch of stuff. Canon offers something like that as well. It's clunky. This is just better without a doubt. And Bluetooth audio. It's really cool that if you want to, say you're a content creator, you have a little DJI mic too, just Bluetooth it right to this. No syncing required. Kind of a cool little thing. If you're a content creator, that little combo might be a killer way to get really good quality audio compared to just running out of a scratch track mic or something really cheap into your camera without the hassle of having to go back and sync everything you shot. So kind of a point for connectivity from a Bluetooth Wi-Fi app control over the Canon. Peripheral control, the side grip. This camera comes with one. You don't get that in here. And this honestly adds a metric crap ton of functionality in terms of run stop, hotkeys, being able to toggle exposure, setting your keys. If you're using autofocus, you can use the joystick to toggle between facial recognition. A really important piece of gear for dock shooters or for other people, and it's removable, so you don't want it, just like get rid of it. But if you do use it a lot, super cool that this system has it, and honestly, it is worth, this being an expensive camera, this adds a lot of functionality in day-to-day use and practicality. So has it, doesn't have it, there's that. Shooting vertical. Let's say you want to shoot vertical content. This camera, if you strip it down, honestly, is really great. You tip it on its side, you got a monitor on top, kind of like the Komodo. Really great, easy, and there's a 9x16 mode. You just go in, any other formats you can move and be more friendly for shooting vertical right out of the gate in a small form factor. This is a little bit more cumbersome and kind of a pain in the ass, just like most cameras are a pain in the ass to switch to vertical. This is just really good at it. So if you're somebody who shoots a lot more vertical content, without a doubt, better system, bar none. So let's talk about brand recognition. Right out of the gate, Canon retains more of a professional name. So if you're looking to get hired on something, just agencies and people that have been in the business, Canon is still a very respected brand and holds that kind of loyalty over the years and is continuously getting better. And everything they do in each iteration that they make makes their brand a little bit more robust and solid in current and new workspaces for the cameras. Now, Blackmagic over the years has a little bit of reputations, and similarly, it is getting better as each iteration goes on, as now they've partnered with Apple. I feel like there's a little bit more trustworthiness there, and to be honest, the Pyxis is maybe the most solidly built camera that they've ever put out, and it's kind of great that at that price point, it is that camera, because this camera feels infinitely more robust than even, say, something like a Sony FX6. Now, the only thing we don't know at this point, Canon has dedicated service factories. If anything happens with your camera, it's very easy to send it and get repaired. Blackmagic, kind of hard to say. Over the years, it's been hit or miss. We haven't had too many issues, but of the issues we did have, sometimes it's hard to work with service and get things replaced quickly and easily. So as long as your stuff's under warranty and you treat it well, that's kind of the caveat when it comes to the Blackmagic. Still a little bit unknown with the Pyxis and their new models, what service and support is going to look like for those and reliability moving forward. Let's talk about just the robustness. Canon, weather sealed, take it wherever. Pyxis, robust for sure. but not weather sealed. Especially in its base format, you've got exposed fans and stuff like that. This might be a little more sensitive to inclement weather versus the Canon. So if you're somebody who's taking stuff out, probably feel pretty good taking the Canon wherever. This might be a little more like, let's check the weather report today and see what happens. Or you might be taking bags and a bunch of stuff like that to keep it protected. That brings us to the end of the video. Which one should you buy? If you're considering both. You might also be considering the C80 that's coming out that is less than this and probably closer priced to this camera. The reason why we're not comparing those cameras at this point is because honestly, this is probably closer to what this can do in all forms of, practicality at a lower price point. Now for me, personally, I'm not telling you what to do. I would take the Canon pretty much because I can do anything. I can walk into any environment and know that this camera is gonna do what I need it to do it well, and I've got options. The Pyxis is a little more calculated. Every job I need to see if this camera is going to work for that, instead of knowing that any job that comes up, I can take the C400 on it. Now, at the end of the day, when you're talking about return on investment, that might be the thing that is the deal breaker, is having a camera that you can take on more jobs than less. At the end of the day, both of these are gonna make really great images. And to be honest, I think you'd be happy with either one. And realistically, you can buy 2 Brains base model for one of these, which offers you even more flexibility. So it really comes down to what you think you're gonna use the camera for the most, and then decide what you wanna do from there. Canon, while being more expensive, offers some good financing options directly through Canon. Blackmagic, you can finance through B&H and other partner programs, but it might not give you the same flexibility that the Canon does. And at the end of the day, sometimes people just don't have more money, and this will be a great camera for anybody. I mean, we have tons of cameras here. I shoot on Mini LFs and Venices and Raptors for jobs that I do. I would have zero problem taking all those cameras away and shooting on this, because after spending time with this, I love this form factor, and it can do a lot, and it looks damn good. I don't think I could show up on set and put this image up and a client would be sad ever. And to me, that's really fun because that opens up a lot of capabilities. I could have 3 of these on set, multicam, do whatever, put one on a gimbal, put one on sticks, put one on a dolly, all for way less price than say even renting a Raptor. And that is worth its own weight when you're factoring in all the things you can do for your shoots. So with that is our video. Hopefully this was informative, comparing specs and talking what they can and can't do. Having both here and putting them side by side has been really interesting to see just how close they are in terms of performance and capability. It really comes down to the nitty gritty and what each one of these individual specs means for you when you're doing a specific job. This will do so many things. I think this is gonna be a market resetting camera, similarly as the C400. This thing outperforms the Burano at 3 times the cost. And this is very close to this camera at almost 3 times the cost from a base model performance. So I hope you get a chance to play with both of these cameras. I don't think you'd be upset. And realistically, if you ended up getting both, this is a B cam to this camera. And also, I think that is a great idea that would work perfectly. This camera cuts very well with this. And once you white balance to a white card, it is very tough to tell them apart. Motion cadence is very similar. They look the same. The latitude is very close, assuming you're shooting in similar specs that allow you to get a little bit more highlight retention or shadow capability. I think no matter what you do, neither of these cameras is a bad choice, and we are super lucky to be alive making films in this time where you can get cinema cameras, true cinema cameras, not just things that look good, but truly perform for the needs and demands of cinema at such ridiculous prices. We're so spoiled, we're so lucky. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.